Thank you for the reminder, Karen. Did we get a recording message? There it is. Okay. And I also have to take participants. I have to take attendance real quick so that we show that we're useful. I'll do that now, and then we're going to do that later on as well, in case other folks come in. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Active Teaching Lab. Today's activity sheet and conversation will be about student feedback, 10 ways to get it. And as always, we don't have 10 ways. We have, I guess in this way, we have 10 ways. Excellent. That worked out for the first time ever. Usually I have like 20 or 15 or 300. And if you go down and you pull things apart, you'll see that there are more than just 10 ways. But 10 ways seems to grab people's attention. So that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on easy things for you to do that you can start working on right away and integrating your course without having to plan ahead for a whole semester. We're going to have some of those more difficult things, like how do you create a culture? You might not be able to just turn it on and create a culture tomorrow, but there are some things that we'll be able to get you going with. So going over the activity sheet, nobody's done this yet, but we do have a Teams discussion going on. And if you see this, if you click on the active teaching discussion and student feedback tomorrow, and you are thinking of something, you can click on that and add it to it, and we will integrate it into we'll continue a discussion on that. I'll join in if you add something there, I think. So where do we start? First of all, let's start with why get student feedback. Anybody want to tell me why we should get student feedback? Why it's a good thing to do in a class? Go ahead and unmute, raise your hand, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. Give me a pause. Yes, Lauren.
Oh.
You win.
Sorry, Cliff, didn't mean to cut you off there. It helps inform instruction. I mean, that's the big one for me, is if I know more about what's going on with them, I know more about what they need.
Very good. And it's important, especially in remote instruction, but it's also important in face-to-face instruction. And if you think about teaching in a face-to-face classroom, what we typically do is we look around the room, and if we see people smiling and nodding, then we feel, okay, they're getting what I'm giving out, then that's good. We wrongly think that sometimes because students are socialized to smile and nod as if they get it because, hey, we're smart people. I've got to give the appearance that I'm getting it because that's what is expected of me. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we smile and nod thinking, I have no idea what they're saying. I have no idea what she's saying, but that's a good point. I don't know, maybe. So finding out how many other, we have to figure out multiple ways to get that feedback because we can't rely on just that one source. And it's hard to do in in an online teaching situation, right? We can't always see all of the faces at one time. Sometimes, it's the cat. Sometimes it's just an avatar, a set of initials, or their screen is blank and we have no idea what's happening. So we have to reach out and find out, is what I'm doing working for everybody? Cliff, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I also would say it is beneficial for helping identify obstacles that you didn't even know were going on. Maybe your screen was blurry or your microphone is bad or something that people feel a little self-conscious picking on you or being the whiner. But if you stop and solicit feedback, you're inviting them to be a whiner.
And you're inviting them to be you're inviting them to be to take some
John,
ownership of the course.
John, just so you know, your microphone cut out a little bit there. So you're sorry. I feel a little awkward saying it, but
you're inviting the students to take some of the responsibility of learning themselves, right? By asking them to be part of the conversation, to give you feedback. And as long as we respond to the feedback, that doesn't mean that we have to say, oh, we're going to do that. It could be, thank you for that feedback. I want to do that, but I can't do that because of pragmatic reason, 1 through 12. Karen Skiba, go ahead and jump in, please.
I just had a funny, well, not funny, but terrible story to share that one of my Teach Online instructors shared, that she was told by one of her students that one of her instructors didn't allow feedback at all in the Zoom meeting and turned off and didn't look at any of the feedback, and apparently was lecturing for 2 hours straight until he realized his microphone wasn't on. So because he didn't allow feedback at all, the students were listening for 2 hours to absolutely nothing. So it's always important to get feedback to make sure that they can hear you and listening, and also to solicit questions. So that was just a story that was told to me.
And that links aren't broken. What links are broken? All of them?
No, sorry. As Cliff was talking about problems like that, I chatted. Links are broken as in another example. Sorry.
As an example, not
right,
like,
right. Yeah.
Hey, John, wake up.
Right. Sorry about that. I can see now how that would.
Your lab is crashing and burning right now. Okay, good. Good. All right. Any other thoughts on getting student feedback from other folks? What are your experiences with having feedback or not having feedback? One of the things that I will share is number 7 here is a discusses a small group instructional diagnosis, or SGID, which is a great acronym. And I've been involved in like 3 or 4 of those on campus. One of them that I wasn't involved in, but it was one that inspired me to be involved. There was a situation where a professor was doing this one thing because it was a thing that she's always done, and got constantly bad, well, not as ideal or optimal as possible reviews from her students. So she's like, I don't know what's happening. They seem listless, uninspired, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody came in, gave her, did a small group instructional diagnosis. And what this is basically is you get a third party, not related to the students, not related to the instructor, so not a colleague in your department usually, and you ask them to come on in and say, hey, students, we need to reach consensus. What are 3 things that your instructor can do to make this better? And they all have to agree on that. So it's not a, the most popular thing necessarily, but it's like it has to be agreed on. 3 things, and they break down into smaller groups. They collect that, they bring all of the top 10 list or 20 list things that they came up with to the front board, and they whittle it down to the top 3 things. Well, the top number 1 thing that this professor had to do was so simple, and she's like, of course I'll do that. That's not a problem at all. The students, she made the change because it was easy. The students loved it because they felt, they were being listened to, but they were also like, it was a user experience thing that was easy to make that nobody knew about other than the students. And now that the instructor made it, it was an easy change. So it's not a difficult thing necessarily to make changes that can improve your experience, but the difficult part is finding out what changes you need to make or you can make. Now, even if you can't make those decisions, that's fine. There's another thing on that list of 3 things that this instructor talked about that she couldn't do because it would have been too much work or it wasn't practical. But she talked to the students about it, and they said, oh, okay, now we know why you're not doing that, but thank you for listening. And that just goes so far in creating that student-instructor relationship that's positive, rather than, why doesn't my instructor do that thing that I'm not telling them that I want done? They won't offer this without some prodding and without some nudging and without you overtly going in and saying, I value your feedback. Please give me your feedback. I want more of your feedback, etc. Cliff and then Karen, are you back in? Hands raised? Unmute.
I forgot to put my hand down, but I
Okay.
just put a resource in the chat and in the Google Doc about the Course Success Self-Review that has a lot of great resources on collecting feedback. So sorry, I keep forgetting to take my hand down in Teams. Sorry about that.
And folks, if you want to add other resources that you have, you can do that either in the chat, but also on the very bottom of the activity sheet. We've got a thing called other resources here. Please add your thoughts and your links to that. All right, Cliff, now to you.
Very good, thank you. I was on the issue of the why. Why do we seek input? I would imagine every instructor is going to be a little different on the spectrum of like how much of a relationship do you want, or what type of relationship do you want to establish with your students? But it would seem there is a lot to be gained from the visible, the demonstrative, almost supplication of me submitting to your feedback. That goes a long way to let the students know that, you know, I'm not an untouchable, I'm not rigid, I'm not an unapproachable person. I want feedback, and I acknowledge my own humanity, and I'm willing to adjust. That there's something great there that you can't get any other way.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you don't have to make every change that the students demand, right? There are very good reasons that we are instructors and they are students, and it's because we often have insight that they don't have. But yeah, to your point, we can acknowledge that they have insight that we don't necessarily have, and if we can share that insight, things will be better all around. Good. All right, and in some ways, if you have a culture of feedback, then all of this is sort of a moot point. You're getting it already. Your students feel empowered in their learning. They can probably connect with each other because they are feeling empowered to connect with you with feedback. So the course then, you know, that's a norm of the course, and now they'll start giving feedback to each other, right? Not necessarily perfectly 100%, but it's part of that culture of, hey, folks, in this class, we can give and receive feedback to each other in a respectful, constructive way. So creating that culture of feedback leads to creating a culture of support in some ways. If I can give you feedback, then I can give you help, and I know that it'll be appreciated. Sharing past feedback. Students, the reason that we're doing this assignment this week or this way is because last year when I did it, the students had a lot of trouble with this part. So they suggested that I change it, and I'm changing it. Let me know how it goes, because you can help me tweak it. And in some ways, you're asking the students to participate in, and this is number 10, sort of, don't just do it for me, the instructor, do it for the students that will follow in your footsteps, right? Think about how the past students have made your life better by helping me fix this assignment. Help the future students by giving me feedback so that the assignment, so that they don't have to suffer as much as you suffered through my badly designed assignment. All right. Shall we get into the, any other thoughts? I'm going to give folks another chance to raise their hand, jump in on sort of that initial why feedback. How do we, in broad terms, create feedback opportunities? And then we can start jumping into the table where you're asking other questions. Karen, thank you.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'm thinking about is, and also looking at what's ahead on this table of questions, is recognizing the difference between collecting feedback on, you know, teaching practices, course management issues, you know, those kinds of things, versus collecting feedback on students' understanding of content. And there is these, what am I trying to say here? So for example, let's say you have a class where you have a big midterm and final exam or project, whatever, but that's it. So you're never collecting any information about how well students are doing on developing their understanding. So I see that as a kind of feedback as well, that which number 9 on the list there is track student progress. And so that's an element that gets at that content understanding and learning process, gathering feedback on that learning process. John mentioned in a face-to-face classroom, we often see looks on faces, although that is arguably fraught with issues of accuracy, right? We use that as a way to track understanding nonetheless. So I guess I'm just trying to make the distinction, yeah, that there's a difference between collecting feedback on the course management issues and course delivery issues, which seems to be the theme of the questions, and that other side of checking in on student progress, which also there are, some of these talk to that. Some of the classroom assessment techniques, tracking student progress, those kinds of things. So yeah, so that was my comment.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's just jump in there then. And thank you, folks, all for, see the right column is also already filled up. That makes my job a lot easier when you jump in with your ideas and your thoughts as well. So thank you for filling out both sides of the chart. All right, so what are some different strategies in soliciting student feedback? Oh, and this is a really good distinction, right? It's easy to get feedback sometimes if you're in a small group because it's easier to pay attention to the individual students and to build that trust and rapport where they feel like they can come to you and give that feedback. In a 600-person lecture, often students feel invisible. They feel like they're a number. They're sitting in the back row, whether the back row is in a physical classroom or whether it just means that they're on page 7 of the Zoom things with nothing turned on and they're just kind of listening while they're doing something else, right? So how do you help the students feel that they are seen and valued and heard? So we've got some thoughts here. Very good. Start each day with a survey. Starting each day with a survey is a great way to get students back into the headspace of the class, right? So if you think about coming fresh and sitting down cold into a class, your mind is still sort of on the trip over to where you are or the class that you just got out of or the dinner that you just got done eating or whatever, the last text that you had on your phone. So getting the students to stop and think, okay, I'm in this classroom. What are we talking about? What do I need to help to talk about? It's sort of hitting the reset button and getting their input. A way to sort of refocus them on the task at hand, which is the learning the content for that class. So excellent way to do that. Doing that at the end of the class is also a great way to have them reflect on what did we talk about? What did I get? What didn't I get? How could I have better connected what they talked about to my life, to my own dreams, pathways, vision for the future, the skills that I have, my past experiences, my values. Anytime that we can get our students to connect to those things, connect new content to those things, we've done deeper learning, deeper teaching, I guess. Because if we can get the students to start looking at the content from their own lens. Oh, this connects with what I used to do, or this skill that I have, or my vision for the future, for my future. Boom, your teaching has just gotten a lot easier. So reflect beforehand, get them involved afterwards. Things like the muddiest point, metacognition things. All right, and what tool do you use for executing the survey? There are lots of tools. You can do a simple anonymous graded survey in Canvas where you give them a point for filling out that last, what could you have done better or worse, or 2 points or whatever it's worth. No right answers. They just get an answer for filling it out and then you go through. And if they fill out something and because they'll eventually catch on, some of them, that because it's anonymous, they can just type in anything to get points. which, okay, that's true. It's not helping things. And if you have a discussion with the whole class, because you don't know who the individual is that's doing that, on why it's important, then I think that gets minimized a little bit. Google Forms is another one that you can do anonymously as long as you don't have them sign in with their wisc.edu account. Those are the two options that I know about. Others might have other options. So Cliff uses Teams and Microsoft Forms, so that would work as well. And you can also have a QR code. So you can just put a QR code on your screen that you share, and then they can come in and take the survey with their phone automatically to get to it if they don't want to do a link. All right, and there's a low effort
Lots
option.
of the polling features also
Yes.
allow
Oh my
for
goodness.
that, and they can be really quick and anonymous.
Yeah, Blackboard Collaborate has polling, Teams has polling.
Even outside tools like Mentimeter and some of those, they're really easy to get to. And that could be QR coded. If you're in a synchronous class, throw up a QR code, or, you know, students are pretty quick with their thumbs. I'm not. To just use their phone and go to menti.com and punch in a number like you would for Kahoot games or whatever else you might use. And I really like Mentimeter in particular because of the different types of polling options it has, where you can, you know, use sliders to indicate to what extent you feel good or bad about something. So it just has a bunch of different ones in there. So that, I think, is a quick, easy way to get it too.
And Lauren, I remember you talking about tricider.com a few years ago because, and one of the things that I loved about that was somebody could suggest something and then there were like pros and cons for those things so that this one student can sort of submit something and other students can follow up to make that decision or suggestion better by adding pros and cons to all of the different things. And then students could vote on it. And in some ways that helps create some levels of consensus within your classroom.
I just used that the other day in a presentation I gave, actually, and you can vote the voting up and down so that if you can't address everything, you find out what the majority really wants you to know about, and you hit those few, and then you still have the list of the other ones. So maybe in an asynchronous way through the learning management system or something, you fill in those blanks later.
Yeah, and in some ways, again, you don't even have to know what everybody does, and you don't have to do everything that they ask you to do, but knowing it, acknowledging it goes a very long way for the students feeling like that you're listening and that you value them. So those are good. Excellent. What is helpful without information overload? All right, especially with over 100 students. What to do with contradictory feedback? All right, and that's a really good, I'm gonna give folks a chance to jump in. What do you do with contradictory feedback? Or what are the ways to make it manageable? If someone else wants to jump in first, I will wait and I'll talk later. Oh, I see some hands up. Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I have to figure out how to put it down. There it is. I changed the setting a little bit. Whatever. Yeah, so information overload, especially with larger classes, seems really important. So I think that's where it helps if you're doing something where maybe it's got multiple choices instead of, right, like fill it in, so that your question that you're asking is really tailored towards what it is you're trying to figure out. So like one question I've used, it's not that large of a class, but to gauge sort of how much time students are spending, like, okay, you know, based on the last couple of weeks, did you spend less than 3 hours, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, or more than 9 hours? And it's a 3-credit lab course, so 9 hours is kind of our target. And then to that, if someone put like over 9 hours, I could have a follow-up like, hey, that's a lot of time, you know, I would suggest reaching out to Dr. Kita, or I just call myself Angela, none of that doctor nonsense. So that way you can, like, you've got a little bit like how much are they spending in the class, and that's, I think, useful in terms of if you're overloading or maybe didn't spend as much time as you wanted to that week. But then there's also that if people need that additional reminder, it's kind of built in. So I think there's ways to do it. I do kind of related to the contradictory feedback because I've also do like the more open-ended questions, like what's one thing you struggled with this week, or what's one thing, what's something you would like to see more of. And sometimes you can get contradictory feedback. I don't know if it's helpful, but I like to do like a FAQ, like take the responses that I get and then pull out a few and make like a discussion post where here's a few things I saw trend-wise. If there's something contradictory, I think it's okay to acknowledge that and say, like, some of you are really enjoying this type of activity and some of you are really enjoying this activity. And that's your chance to say, well, we're going to keep doing both of them because they each have different learning objectives. But, if this activity is what you gravitate more towards, that might mean this. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a way you can use that to then kind of get back at why you're doing the things you're doing. But I don't know if the person who had that question had like a specific, because contradictory feedback that's a challenge, I will say.
I think contradictory feedback is one of the hallmarks of universal design for learning, or sort of it really puts a punctuation exclamation mark on the idea that we learn differently. And it makes sense, we all bring different experiences, we all bring different value sets, we bring different skills into our classes, into the things that we learn in and outside of a classroom, right? So of course, something's going to work for you that is totally not going to work for me, or vice versa, right? And I love what you said. I recognize that this isn't working for some of you and this isn't working for others, but we're going to keep doing both because it gives you a chance to build the skill and the experience in the area that you don't do already. And yet we're also doing something that hopefully you are comfortable with. So you've got a chance to excel and a chance with what you already have and a chance to learn something new and be a little bit more uncomfortable with. And I think that's a lovely balance to have in a learning environment where there are things in there that I can sort of anchor to and stand solidly on. Have that intellectual confidence because I'm comfortable in this space. And then there are things that are going to be a little bit more uncomfortable, where I'm going to need relentless curiosity, purposeful action, empathy, and humility in order to survive and thrive in that space where I'll need help. So yeah, having both is great. Good. Other thoughts from folks on these things? I'll also say, again, the tool that I mentioned that Lauren Rosen shared a while ago, though it is not a university-supported tool, tricider.com does get at that idea of, here's a thing, here, somebody who loves it might be in the pros, this is why it's good, and somebody who hates it, contradictory, would put in the cons, this is why I hate it, this is why it's terrible. Give them both. And then, at least in some ways, it lets students know that their experience of hating something or loving something is not universal. They could hear that from you, 1,000 times, but they won't believe it necessarily unless they hear it from other students, where they're like, wait, you don't agree that this is the best thing ever? How could you? Well, it's true. Melissa, go ahead and unmute.
Unmute. Yep. Okay. For me, when I get contradictory information, most often it's when I ask an open-ended question that I shouldn't actually leave open-ended. So like, what was the thing from the pre-class activity that was hardest for you? You want to make sure we cover. Well, it's possible that like everything that seems like an outlier is everyone's second choice. So one of the things I love about Microsoft Forms is they have a ranking option, and then I like list the learning targets for the day and have them rank them from like hardest to easiest. And it gives me a bigger picture, even though I'm restraining the students' responses more.
Yeah, and adding that constraint of, I'm not going to let you do an unstructured question, but here are some choices, both gives them that multiple options of choices, but it also protects you in some way. And it also gives structure to their thoughts because they have to choose A, B, or C, or D, or whatever. So it won't introduce, oh, I want puppies and songbirds and whatever into the thing, it narrows the decisions that the data that you have to deal with and figure out, if that makes sense. All right. And then the answer from the crowd is choose ways to get feedback that will be graphic, like sliders. And again, visual, seeing that dashboard and seeing where you stand as a student in that dashboard view is kind of a really eye-opening thing. You all remember the Wii, the game station, the Wii, the little people without any arms who were walking around doing bowling and air hockey and whatever else. There was a thing called Wii Votes, where you could put in a question like hot dogs or hamburgers, and then you vote, and then you get to go see your little avatar walk over to the hot dog side or to the hamburger side, or to the I'm a vegan side. And then you get to see, if you're the only one who likes hot dogs, then you're standing there alone. But if half the people love hot dogs and half the people love hamburgers, you get to sort of see that. And it's a great sort of eye opener that people are different. And just, my preferences for the course are not universal. So that helps me, I think, as a student, sort of suffer through the letting other people have their turn with the hot dogs while I would prefer hamburgers or whatever. So yeah, that graphical feedback I think is really nice. Whenever I have a quiz or not a quiz, a survey, I will let the students, at the bottom of the Google form you can choose, let participants see the responses, and I will get that up there, as quickly as possible. I wish it were actually in the tool itself sometimes, because I think that's helpful. It affirms that other people have taken this exam, have taken the survey, have given feedback, and I'm another person who's given that feedback. And I can see how other people break down in the responses. That helps situate and contextualize the questions. Excellent. All right. How often to check in with students, and then with forms or whatever, and also follow up with students. How do we follow up with students that disclose mental wellness issues, etc.? All right, I'm going to do the first one here. How often do you check in with students? I would say every opportunity. And that doesn't mean we did 12 things today, so I'm going to send you 12 surveys to fill out at the end of the day to tell me how you're doing, because that can feel overwhelming, right? That's overwhelming for students. And just as, I don't like filling out surveys unless they're very quick and they're sort of already integrated in the thing. At the bottom of a survey, if I don't see an indicator of how long the survey is, I will often end that survey, because I've taken too many surveys that I'm 10 pages into it. I'm like, when will this end? So keep it short if you're doing surveys, but it doesn't have to be surveys. It can just be a question at the end of your quiz that is a reflection question. What were you thinking when you did this? How might this have worked better? How does this connect with your experiences, skills, passions, dreams, etc.? That's an easy way to get feedback, and to make it part, if you make it part of that everyday experience, everything that we do in this class, I'm going to be asked to do some reflection on, then it no longer becomes one extra thing that I have to click on afterwards. It can just be part of the thing, part of the learning, which is what it should be. Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And I know surveys are great and we're focusing a lot on those, which I think are great. And there's that like figuring out the balance of how many to use. And I think I agree that like short is better. And if it's sometimes you target it, like maybe this week you want to know about how many hours they spent. Maybe this next week it's what was the most challenging. So you can like mix it up a little. That also kind of makes it more interesting, I think. And then as you were talking, I was thinking you can also have it integrated into, I think other people have mentioned, an assignment in particular, towards the second half of the semester, it transitions into a group project that's scaffolded. So each week, members of the group have to submit sort of a representation of what they worked on that week, just as like what did you do this week? And so the feedback that they submit, they just do add a comment to the assignment that's, what was it you did? Summarize in like a sentence. What did you work on this week? What was something you found challenging and how did you overcome it or not? Like, are you still looking for more help? Like if they're looking for research articles, oh, it was really hard to find. So they share something like that. And then because it's a group project, I also put like, rank, what do you think the relative contribution was of the four? If it was all equal, put 25% for everyone or 33 if it's a group of 3. So that way they're also kind of getting used to providing a little bit of reflective feedback along the way. And I can also kind of check in without like asking each individual in the group how it's going. They kind of have to tell me how it's going along the way. So that helps, one, I think, for them to think about, reflect what they did and what they might have struggled with. And then if there is a problem with the group, by getting that kind of check-in each week automatically built in, I can identify problems before they become the worst group project in the world. So I feel like it's also got that aspect too of helping as needed.
And if you can make somehow that, what are the things that you're struggling with, or what are your challenges that you're facing, an intergroup activity where anonymously, ideally, I guess, but eventually they'll trust each other enough to not be anonymous, maybe sometimes for some of them. If we can figure out how to ask, I'm having this challenge as a student, other students, how did you get through that? Then we start creating this dialogue of students helping each other navigate good study skills, time management skills, finding resources, and that's less work that you as an instructor need to do. And if our students are helping each other, then again, saves us time.
I think that was my fourth question. So it was like, what did you do? What did you struggle with? And then it was, were you able to help one of your teammates or were they able to help you this week? And so it's like a leading question where they can see that question. And then maybe the next week they're like, how can I help someone this week? So you can also have questions that kind of frame something you want them to do, for sure.
Yeah. When I taught freshmen in the Wisconsin Experience course, we started every class with a help. I need help with X, Y, or Z. There's no place to work out in my residence hall because it's too crowded. And then help. Here's the thing that I found this week that I think might help other people because I found it helpful. So it's both the I need help and, oh, look, I have this resource that I can share with other people. And it was great because the students would be like, oh, come over to our residence hall. The equipment is never used and you're happy to, it's just kind of a sharing of resources. All right. Yeah, that culture of support. Good. Other thoughts on that before we move on to the next one? Oh, the second follow-up is, what do we do when they disclose mental wellness issues? Anyone want to jump in with an idea? There are resources on campus, of course, and ideally those resources are compiled and curated, at least in broad categories, in your syllabus and other sort of policy documents that your course has. I think I need to recognize and other people recognize that although I have empathy for people, I do not necessarily know the right answers, and I do not necessarily know the best way to handle situations. So I always get a little bit leery about saying, oh, hi student, I see this, and here's what you should do about it, right? Because I'm not trained in that area, so I don't want to do the wrong thing. I'd love other folks to jump in about how they handle the situation. Any thoughts?
Well, just one comment here. I think it's important to let students know to be human as an instructor and let them know that, that everybody's having difficulties and, don't be afraid to share them with me, and maybe to be open as an instructor personally so they can come to you and feel comfortable and not feel bad about it. And I hate to keep putting resources in here from my course success self-review, but it has really good resources on how to deal with those issues too, and and who to contact for those type of things, but also just to make them know that you're a human, you're a person, and we're all in this together, and to make it not sound like it's not important. We all have all of these issues, and make them feel like it's okay for them to talk to you. So that's not a real good answer, but it's one that I think is important to say.
I think you bring up a really, really good point. And especially, I think now there's levels, or anytime that there are sort of widespread issues that cause concern and angst, and sometimes we're not doing well. And it's okay to tell the students, it's okay to model to the students that I'm not doing very well today. So if you could help me out a little bit and jump in some ways, that models that it's okay for the students as well to sort of be a little bit kinder and gentler to themselves, to ask for help if they need help. And I think that is a very good point. We don't want to be, in my opinion, this sort of deity-like thing, Professor Perfect, who has no emotion, who has no problems ever. We need to show them that yes, you can be successful, or you can be in the discipline that we're in and still be human, to your point, and we will try to support you as much as we can.
Yeah, it means a lot that they know that you care about them. I do that with, I teach instructors, but when I see they're falling behind, I send them messages, and it's amazing, how one little message out to a student who seems to be struggling, how much that means to them, because they don't get that everywhere.
Right. Now, no, your emails are fantastic.
I don't know, I send a lot.
Well, you do, but that's okay because you're doing an online course and that's how you communicate. And I know, speaking personally, those extra reminders of, hey, John, can you get to this thing that you said you would do? It's like, I need that, because chances are very good that with my ADHD brain, they've gone off and disappeared. So I really appreciate that extra support. But I
When the
think
instructors
also,
are now doing that to their students, and they're finding it does mean a lot to them. It means a great deal to them, especially now for students who are struggling.
Over communicate. Yep. Excellent.
I just want to say that that was one of my favorite suggestions from Teach Online, was to reach out to students with an email, especially especially the first couple of weeks. If you notice students who haven't turned something in right at the beginning of a course, that's where they're often, if you reach out to them, that's where you can find out if they're having some issues, mental health issues or family issues, and then intervene early.
And it might be that they don't even know that they're having mental health, mental wellness issues, that this is just what their norm is, and they're not recognizing that other people are noticing as well. So I think that it can also be sort of a wake-up call of, oh, maybe I need to figure something out myself. Good, thank you. Excellent. That's the next one. So as to not overwhelm students, what is the recommended max number of items? Oh, within a survey, for example. All right, excellent. Karen Spader, can I call you in on
Sure.
talking about pulse surveys? You do
Sure.
them very well.
So that's actually my comment right there for pulse surveys specifically, was my kind of, I'd say 3 to 5, one open-ended. Someone else went on to say, I think it depends on how often, if it's daily, weekly, end of unit. So yeah, I mean, again, if that's what we're kind of thinking of, which is just one of those kind of check-in, how are things going? That's what I would say for that, 3 to 5.
Yeah, and the thing that I do to sort of, I guess, leading questions, if you will, in surveys, I will say, the idea of this activity was insert learning objective here. How well did we do that? Did we do that? What could we have done to insert learning objective again more efficiently or effectively for you? And every time that I add that learning outcome or learning activity or learning objective, it reminds them again, oh, that's what I was supposed to get out of this. And then it's that metacognitive moment again of reflection where they can say, I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to get out of it. Well, here's the reminder. And it just reinforces that I want you to get this out of that. So the question can be, a very simple yes, no question, but in that question, say, because I wanted you to get outcome, I did this. Did it work? Yes, no, why not? Why not? So,
Yeah.
All right, and poll everywhere is another option. The surveying quiz feature for homework, excellent. Yep. Mentimeter again is also not a university supported tool. I need to add that as a disclaimer. Mentimeter, TriCider, not supported. That's all I'm going to say. Excellent. And Poll Everywhere is also, interestingly, not a supported tool. So use it at your own risk and be careful about using unsupported tools. Okay, yes. Karen,
Does
please.
anybody know, does Piazza have a polling function?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
I feel like it should.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's not an answer.
Well, I think it does. I think
Yeah.
it does. But also, they're still looking at what they're going to do because now that they're charging for Piazza, we don't know if we'll have that moving forward. So, but I think they do have one.
Yeah, and let me just put a little carrot in that. As Karen says, if you aren't aware about this already, Piazza used to be free, and now they are starting to charge for use. And this is causing the university to say, is Piazza even the best choice that we have? Or, to your instructors, educators, is there a tool that you have heard of that can do what Piazza does or better or differently than what Piazza does that the university should instead invest in? If so, please, you can send me a note. You can, well, let's just start off by sending me a note and I will forward it to others. And that way we won't be bothering everybody about the thing. So, right. Canvas discussion forums, it's been noted, are not the best solution for everything. So, yes, those ideas, Melissa, and
Thanks,
and thank you for sharing that as well. Okay, this is the last question, unless other people add more later on. Using features in Zoom, like reactions, as a way of getting small bits of feedback and gauging engagement. I was in a session the other day. It was a job talk for somebody who's trying to get a job in St. Louis, and she walked through how to use Zoom in an engaging way. And it was the first time that I experienced a Zoom session where they said, if this makes sense to you, please share, a reaction using the Zoom reactions. I had never used the Zoom reactions, but unlike Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, which some of you have used, and I know Karen Skiba uses it very well to say, tell me what you're thinking or how you're feeling right now, and you can go add a little emoji there. I've not ever done that in Zoom reactions, but Zoom, you can do that as well. And it shows up on your picture or your face, the thumbs up or whatever. Right, Blackboard Collaborate has reactions as well. And Teams does as well. You all see that little GIF. You can all put in your favorite GIF for engaging students. Thank you, Karen. All right. Of course, then the big thing is, in theory, this works, but in practice, it does take some getting used to. And again, with anything that you do, the first time you do, it's going to probably fail terribly. The second time is going to be awkward and stifled. And by the third or fourth time that the students do it, okay, they're starting to understand how it works and what works well and what doesn't work well about it. Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that point about if you can't see all of the reactions, that might be challenging. And the reactions in Zoom aren't super persistent, right? They last a little while and disappear. So below that, I also added, and it would work in Zoom too, but you could do the goofy, like, how awful was this problem set we just did? 10, the worst problem set I've ever done. 1, it was great. I'm gonna go teach a lecture on it or whatever. So, you know, you could do that. And the numbers I've found, because you can at least get a sense of, like, are they all, you know, 9s and 10s? Are you seeing a lot in the middle? And then that could be like your, okay, well, maybe we'll review or something. So I think that, and then I guess I do love BBCU for class stuff, because you can use emojis, but you can also, down at the bottom, there's a little reactions thing, or even the hand raise, and I like it because it shows up in the participants list too. Yep. So if you're having them do like smiley face or sad face with the yeah, Karen, they'll all show up in the participant list. And I also like the hand raise as a quick feature, which I think would be great on Zoom too. I don't know, in Zoom, does it tell you how much? So like BBC, it'll say like 15 participants have, if I have that notification popped up, so I can tell like, oh, half of you have raised your hand versus like having to scroll. So
right.
BBCU has its problems, but it's been really great for that like quick feedback. And I think you also made a comment, like the first couple times it'll feel weird for you and for them, but I feel like it helps because almost no one turns their screen on in a live big group, which is totally cool. But by having the little hand raise or having something, at least it's like, okay, you're there and you heard me. And if people seem like they're not getting it, you can throw in the goofy things like, who's ready to leave for the day? I don't know. It's a way to like interject levity and humor as well. So I'm a big fan.
Excellent. And it's 2:00. You can go if you'd like. I'll stick around for the next few minutes. I wanted to share a fun thing that I heard on Teaching in the Pandemic or Pandemic Pedagogy Facebook group that I'm in. There's an instructor who has a Zoom background contest for her students. And every week the students get to choose the background screen and set it up, and then she'll use it. And it's kind of fun because there was one where they had a couple of examples, and one of them was they put the person into a meme, so it'll be a background thing, and then there's the person in the meme. Of course, the instructor, if she doesn't want to use that one, she can say, no, I'm not going to use that one. But it's kind of a fun way to get the students, again, feeling like they're part of your group. So can't take credit for it, but happy to share. Thank you all for coming today. It's 2:00. I appreciate the discussions, and the activity sheet will stay up and you can keep on adding to it. Go forth and teach better. I'll stick around. Yay. And feel free to unmute and talk to me.
One of the things I like about the new reactions here in Teams is that they pop up on the screen that you're sharing very briefly, but I do think that's kind of fun. And I wonder what it would look like if lots of people did it all at the same time.
Where are you doing that, Karen? I'm trying to find the reactions to do that.
Up at the top next to the
next to the chat.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering where people were doing that. Now I'm doing it. That is nice. Yeah, so I wish they could have all the best features of Teams, Blackboard Ultra, and Zoom all in one. Wouldn't that be nice?
We will get there. We're going to get there. It's going to get better. But right now, it's still kind of that crazy exploratory area.
Yeah,
Hazel,
I like
go ahead.
this feature.
Hazel, go ahead and unmute if you'd like.
I was just testing out what y'all were just saying. So I was going through Sorry
There's the
about.
hand raise. No worries.
Well, I did all of them. The last one was a hand.
Aha, yes. And
The
that's
hand,
actually,
the
there's,
hand raise is the only one that doesn't go away until you click it again. The
Oh.
others are just a one-time click, but yeah.
Oh,
there's,
you're
there's
right.
that little vertical pipe in there separating
Mhm.
it, but yeah, maybe that should be.
Clapping. Okay,
I
active.
can't stop doing it now. It's fun.
And
Right.
the
Karen,
hand
you're going to
raise
be
also
sad
has
that you showed us this thing.
keystrokes.
Because I'm going to do it all the time.
And shift K.
So will we be doing it, doing this in Teams now instead of
The active teaching labs, I've decided I wanted to learn to lean into, if you will, into Teams to
okay.
see what it's like for me.
Okay.
I read somewhere that I read on the Canvas site, Canvas News, that Teams was going to be the default video conferencing platform for Canvas.
Oh.
And that was announced last March and sort of reaffirmed in October in a press release by Canvas and Microsoft. I do not know what that means as far as UW-Madison's implementation of Teams, whether it'll ever replace Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. As oftentimes, Canvas will make a change and they'll say it's voluntary. You can choose opt-in with quizzes, for example, or the field editor, the text editing thing. There's now a new one that they've said, okay, you can't use the old one anymore. We're going to make this sort of the default. So I'm wondering if my thought was that was where that would go. I don't know if it will or not, but I thought if it does, it's a good idea to get in more experience with Teams in this sort of situation.
So I had to find your email. I had been accustomed to just going to Canvas and then to Active Labs.
Yep.
And it's only 2020 there. So where do I go without having to go search for the email?
Yeah. So, and that's another change that I did. We found that we were only using the Canvas site as sort of a place to embed the activity sheets, and that felt like an extra layer that we didn't need to do. Although it was a nice central location for that. at.wisc.do.wisc.edu, or if you just Google Active Teaching Lab, I should show up. This program should show up at the top there, and that'll get you to the page on where you can register for the ones throughout the semester on our academic technology website.
I've registered, but often I'm juggling between meetings, and so I don't want to go to, and search for your name, and which is what I did this time because I couldn't just go to Canvas.
And if you're registered on our AT site, if you register, you should get an email reminding you, one, affirming your registration, and in that email there should be a little file, an ICS file, or it's like add this to your calendar, it'll say, and if you click on that, it should automatically add a little link to your calendar.
Okay, because I have registered, and I see your emails, but often it's not at the top of the heap.
Absolutely, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out different ways to get it as easy as possible, but we're not there yet.
Okay,
it's not as easy as a centralized class.
Right, so I can just stop looking at that. I was wondering why it was still at 2020. The active lab. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I got you. I'm not missing anything.
I should put something on that front page that says, here are the links for all of the 2021 labs. I should actually do that this afternoon.
Would you do that? And then I can always go there. Thank you.
Well, I'm still sharing my screen. I don't have to share my screen.
This was very helpful. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All right, John. Well, nice job today. I'm going to take off. Don't forget to download your attendance. Oh, shoot. Everyone left. I hope you did that.
I did twice.
Okay, good.
Hopefully one of them has more than the other. And
your
and I
photo.
can stop recording too. Oh my God.
You guys, how do I change my photo? I've been trying to do that all day and no luck. It has my really old photo on there. And when I click on the little 3